Geshe Tashi Tsering, Abbot of Sera May Monastery in Karnataka, India. We've known each other, I think, now for 15 years as you represented the Dalai Lama to the Elijah Board of World Religious Leaders. I had less gray in my beard. You had less gray on your head. The nice thing is that my smile and your laughter haven't changed, and that's more important than the color of our hair. So it's a pleasure to have the chance to share with you again today. Tell me, Geshe-la, you're under lockdown, you're in India, you're experiencing various symptoms of the coronavirus. What implications does that have for you as the head of a monastery, as a spiritual leader? What are the challenges? What are the realities from the religious organizational perspective?
Yes, I mean, for most challenging thing is not knowing when or if the virus reaches here, because hospital and the infrastructure to get treatment for the severe, infected by the virus is long way from here, 2 hours driving, and very limited, the space or the beds. And at this stage, mentally, that is constantly, in my head. When it comes, how I'm going to deal with this. More than 5,000 monks in Sera, not just in Sera May, in Sera, living in a very, very dense community. Each, like a hostel, they may have 200 to 300 monks living in a different rooms, but each room may shared by 2-3 monks, different ages. So that is really, at this stage, it is the most scaring and worrying thing in what I'm facing it. But of course, scaring and worrying will not solve the problem. And we had, in fact, introduced self-quarantine entire monastery 13th of March, much earlier than the state government, Karnataka government, or the central government, Indian government introduced, this kind of lockdown. But because we are surrounded by the Indian or local Indian people, we don't have any power there to not to pass through the monastery, or they're not allowed to come to monastery to sell fruits, vegetables. We don't have power. What we have power is our monks or the Tibetan communities not to come, our monks not to go out. So that we very, very strictly, put that control. And that's the one thing what we can do. I mean, of course, after central government introduced this lockdown for 3 weeks from 25th of March, our job get a little bit easier because, less Indian are coming. So that is the one thing what we are applying to. Then, of course, all those advice, the cleaning hand and so on and so forth. But then, of course, me as a head of the Sera May monastery, I can't go and check every single, the houses. I can't do that. And on top of that, I mean, now it's getting better because, in Tibetan, we don't have that kind of culture, constantly washing your hands and so forth. And it's not that easy to change, have that kind of habit. But also it is very interesting or very strange feeling. Like, normally when I look through my window, this window I can see one street. cut through the sort of many houses. This time is the time around 6. Is the time we have a debating session starting 6 and ending around 9:30 or 10. And the streets are full of monks going to the debating, but now completely airily empty. So many of our collective spiritual activities, like debating, they all stopped. We had to. Whether it's going to work or not, we don't know. But we try our best. But, we encourage the individual monks, individually, they should continue their studying, all those things. And as I said, it is a scaring, worrying time, but, the teachings of the Buddha constantly remind us nature of impermanence. Things are not static. When the causes and conditions are met, result is inevitable. And that is, which I, every morning, individually myself, when I woke up, try to remind myself, the causes and conditions are met, this virus to occur. And it is now, out there and spreading all over the world. And so just scaring, as sense of scaring and a feeling of worry will not solve this. And what we have to do our best to, as much as we can, reduce the suffering and reduce the difficulty.
So let's look at this. Let's look at this in greater detail, because one of the questions that we've been trying to get the wisdom of different religions is dealing with the fear. And you're acknowledging the fear in the very reality here. This is a scary thing you say. You're talking about your own fear as an abbot responsible for 5,000 Tibetan monks. You worry for them. You worry for their safety, for their well-being. But you're saying worrying doesn't help. So what are the tools that we have to overcome the worry? Even if you say impermanence and we recognize impermanence, still, the fear is there. How to cope with that fear?
Yes, I think there are 2 levels that we can do. I think the first level is really very much simply to deal with that emotional levels of like fear, worrying, concern, anxiety. That these are the more at the emotional level. And to do that, then of course, for example, in the Tibetan Buddhism, we have certain recitations, like His Holiness Dalai Lama encourages us to say this Tara mantra and so on and so forth. And do some, the really simple meditation to calm down that agitated thought, those things. But those are this will take the edge of those emotions, fears and worries. This will not, completely get rid of or completely solve, the fears and worries. But there is underlying, that is what I just touched briefly, understanding of nature of impermanence. Whether I like it or not, whether the entire humanity like it or not, this body that we have individually, it has the potential to catch the virus, high potential. And that's a reality. That must be fully aware of us. We should try all our best to put masks, to clean the hands and all those things. But our body, which is going to, unfortunately, is going to catch, the body itself has all the potential to catch this virus. And that's a reality. And those understanding, if we bring more in the deeper level, constantly remind ourselves, yes, it is scary, it is, but the body that I have is not made of rock. It's not made of iron. It is made of full of genes and molecules. And these genes and molecules are very, very easy to be interrupted by these other viruses. And that's how it is. So this understanding of the reality as it is or as they are then helps to support the reduction, to reduce the fears and angers, or fears, worries, anxieties, scary, all those things. So there are two levels that we need to play, individually and also, I think, collectively. For example, as you know very well, Buddha constantly taught to his follower, everything is interconnected, interdependent. This interconnectedness, physically, environmentally, all this. So is the nature of, the reality that we live now, particularly in the 21st century. All those things are really connected. The small virus, very, very tiny virus, entire world, humanity, this. And not only physically, but not only emotionally, financially, geopolitically, so many things are. But just this small virus,
So I'm going to get back to the Tara Mantra. Maybe we'll conclude the interview with the Tara Mantra. Is it very long?
No, it's very short.
So good. So maybe we can conclude the interview with the recitation of the Tara Mantra. So let's leave that for later, because I find that
sure.
that very, very potentially helpful to viewers. But I want to go back to the basically your answer to dealing with fear. I mean, there's the technique side, which is the mantra, which I will get back to later. But the other side of it is really wisdom and understanding. If you have proper wisdom and understanding, then what? So you're talking about understanding that this is our reality. We are fundamentally vulnerable. We can be fundamentally knocked down by viruses. And we are also fundamentally interconnected. And what you're telling me is that once we have this recognition of the true reality and we come to a correct grasp, then somehow that's going to help us. Well, how will it actually help us feel more secure that we know that we are insecure?
Okay. In reality, we are not more insecure than before this virus come into being. As I said, outside there are so many things to cause us to lose our life. Very, very tiny things. Even those tiny, small things like our food, our medicines can go wrong to kill us. That's the reality. Yes, we are very, very, very aware of, this virus is going around us. I don't think, that our insecurity become more something, serious after coming this virus. No. So, of course, understanding the things as they are will not change the nature of the virus, will not change the virus to completely disappeared from the planet or disappeared from your body. No. What it will do, it will give us mentally, it will give us at least minimum not to panic. At this stage, for example, I read once a day. I read, the BBC. That's one of my main sources to get outside the world what's happening. In the UK, what you call abusing, your partner is
domestic abuse.
Domestic abuse. The number is increased.
Yeah.
it is not just because
of the lockdown. People are shut down in the same space. It brings out the tension, domestic.
Yeah, and this, sense of agitation, sense of, so these, understanding of this reality, understanding of as there are, will reduce this agitation, irritation. This, I'm sure you have heard this quotation from His Holiness, His Holiness Dalai Lama many times, this 7th century great Indian master Shantideva and his famous text, Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, clearly stated, of course, it's not easy to practice, but it is very, very, very useful in a verse saying, if there's something to be done to solve the problem, what's the point of getting upset? If there's nothing to be done, then what's the point of getting upset?
I think the Dalai Lama actually put that out as his message on coronavirus. He hasn't been giving interviews as far as I can see. He did put out one written message, and in that written message, he basically gave the gist of saying that.
Yeah.
What's the point of getting upset? Yeah.
Yeah. If there's something to be done, like as I mentioned, here a very difficult situation, we try to put ourselves locked down in an early stage. Very, very difficult situation. We need to depend on local Indian people not to get upset. So we did all our best. Of course, we don't know, that's enough or not. But at the end, we feel, okay, we have done our best under the situation, under the circumstances. So those are something which I feel in the two layers of dealing with our thoughts and emotions. The fear, concern, worrying are the emotional level. Those are some kind of different spiritual traditions can be done in different ways, praying to the God and so on and so forth. But also to bringing in a more deeper level, the understanding of the reality. And that will support what we do spiritually, that emotional level, to sort it out.
That's good. It's very helpful. It's very coherent. Going back to this, you just spoken about interconnectivity as part of the understanding that allows us to realize all this. Interconnectivity leads to solidarity. If we're all connected, we all have to show solidarity. How does one manifest solidarity under lockdown? How do 5,000 Buddhist monks who are crammed in dormitories and can't walk down the street to their debating session, how do they show solidarity to the world?
Yes, I think it is not that easy. Normally when we express our sympathy or our the concern, we go and hug, and and this time it's completely opposite. You have to do completely different. You have to keep distance.
Tibetans are very physical. They do a lot of hugging.
For example, me being lived in the West quite some time, I like hugging.
Yeah, I know that. We hug also, but it's part of the monastic culture to hug?
No, it is not. It is not. It is not. But I'm talking about in general, So now, for example, for example, this morning, today is the full moon day, and the full moon day, twice a month, in the we call the fully ordained monks, the monks who took all the vows, we have to do twice a month, full moon day and new moon day. We have to do what we call the confessing the downfalls that we created during the days. And today we have only five monks, 2 abbots, 2 disciplinary teachers, 1 chanting master. Normally, more than 3,000 monks will come to do that in the main hall. But today we have only 5 of us because of the restriction. So now, what we did is we used the modern technology to ask all the monks to join at 7 o'clock, where there are individual day room or an individual hostel, to join, mentally to join this hour-long practice.
Who does one confess to?
So what we do is we confess, saying during this last 15 days, if I have broken or done certain my vows, so all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to forgive, to sort of ask them, to tell them to, if I had broken certain, that's what confession is.
It's a prayer to the Buddha.
Yeah, it is a prayer
to God. It's not, you don't confess to a person, you confess
No.
to the spiritual reality itself.
Yeah, that's right. It has a slightly different from the what you call the Christian they do, or to go to the anyway. So that sort of thing, solidarity. Another thing is
in other words, solidarity in the sense of tuning in with intentionality to be together with something that's going on, and thereby reconstituting mentally what you can't do physically. That's solidarity.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Another one is, for example, two nights ago, entire monastic monks joined this candlelight offering at 9 in the evening, which Indian Prime Minister asked to do that. Although it's individually. So now, then also, for example, the individual monasteries administrations provided, the food, money to the people, the Indian people who cannot go to their towns or the villages, who are completely stuck, like more or less in the West we call homeless. Not that many as in like Delhi or other big cities, but it's still local, builders, local. They have lots of these day labor, and they're just stranded here. And since that lockdown started, we have done, today is the third time they went to different places to distribute food and other things. So those are something which I think that it is a solidarity, it is a collective sort of the action, just about our level.
What would you advise people who view this interview eventually, who are in similar situations of being limited, incapacitated, and they want to practice their sense of being interconnected and express solidarity to others? What could they do? What advice would you have for them?
I mean, for example, people who, like here in the monastery, there are several hundred monks who are more or less, bound, but they don't go out then. So their contribution is mainly prayer, to make the world more peaceful, more, working together. And that's what we encourage those monks to do that. So there are three levels.
Do you have special prayers that you either composed or that you're saying additional amounts of prayers in order to address the situation? Is there a boost?
I mean, as we are going to talk a little bit, or going to say that mantra, which Tara mantra, which is strongly suggests to the, of course, all the precautions, take into account, but then mentally to saying the Tara mantra, which is, something, and also, I think at the 7th or 8th century, just Buddhism is coming to Tibet. There were also, it seems there was a big, this kind of virus, what you call the plague. And Dhammasambhava composed a particular, incense offering, that smoke offering. And that is also we are doing, every Wednesday morning and twice a month.
You're doing it because of the coronavirus.
That is what we are talking about. We are doing it, yeah. Because that prayer is composed by this great Tibetan, the Indian master who came to Tibet, which has a strong connection. He deliberately composed this prayer to eliminate that plague, and that's we thought, they may have some connection, but we don't know.
I interrupted you before. You were going to summarize and talk about how the different levels come together. Was there an idea that you didn't get to say?
Yes, what I'm saying is, to express interconnectedness, interdependence, and solidarity, we don't need everybody in one place, or we don't need everybody to do the same things. We can do, according to our level, our situation, and this is what I gave you that example. Those monks who cannot go to support outside world, they can do the things from their level with a prayer, with the deep down wish, and so on and so forth. But who are able to go outside, who are able to connect outside world, they should do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my sort of, what I see, or what I think the solidarity, contribution, or whatever, interconnectedness.
Beautiful. One thing we were going to talk about, we haven't gotten to yet. People are losing a lot. I mean, the fear is fear of loss ultimately.
Yes.
Fear of loss of life, but people are losing their freedom and losing their money and losing mobility and losing beloved ones, and there's a lot of loss. And I think Buddhism has thought a lot about loss in this life, about deprivation. So as people are facing that reality, what wisdom would you offer them from the tradition that you represent?
Okay. Again, I will say first thing more in the more philosophical sides of that. In the teachings of the Buddha and the subsequent Buddhist teacher, remind us constantly, whatever you have collected, whatever you have bring together, sooner or later they are going to disperse. Like the autumn, during the autumn, the millions of leaves, which during the summertime, they are at the same tree. And when they fall down, and the wind will take away from all the directions. And that is the nature. Whether we like it or not, one way or another, what we have collected, including my cherished body, one day it will go. Of course, Mike, this is currently very, very useful. This computer will one day stop it working, either through the electric shock or whatever. And that is the reality. Of course, we should do all our best under this situation, not to lose our own cherished life, not to lose our loved ones' life, their possessions, all their things. After trying all our best, everything put together, still there is a chance it may happen. When it comes, accept it, instead of tightly holding and getting crazy, not useful. So that is again going back to the first point which I made, nature of impermanence. Because of impermanence, we come together. You and me, become very good friends, although these days we don't meet, because of nature of impermanence. One day, we will go separate. I don't know, you or me. That's the reality. I lost my father last year. I lost one of my brothers a few years ago. Yes, emotionally hurtful, painful, but when I reflect on the nature, that is the fact, that is the reality. I mean, when a few weeks ago I read, the 1918 Spanish flu, how many my lives are lost during that period, and many other, these viruses, millions of people, killed by different viruses, and it is going to happen. This is not going to be the last, sadly. But we have to try. We have to try. work. We have to minimize as much as we can.
Let me just say that never has anyone spoken about death and its inevitability with a more beautiful smile on their face.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I can't stop. I can't stop smiling. Not because I love death. I don't. But we have to have sense of humor. We have to have a sense of something positive.
Yeah. So we have to be able to smile even under these conditions. What will the world look like when Corona is over?
Sorry?
What will the world look like when Corona is over?
There are two levels. Hopefully, more thoughtful leaders to lead more in a collective, not my country, not my community, more collectively, and more sensible, not greedy. Take more responsibility to not just my country, but also others at the leaders level. Really, that's what we need now. We need leaders, world leaders, thinking 7 billion human beings, not my, 1 billion, half a billion, whatever. And also have the sense of reality. We can't continue that the luxury that want to live our life. Our resources outside world has a limit, and have those bigger thinking from the world leaders level, from the individual level, like you and me. I don't know, you are big leader, not the world leader, not the country leader, but like you and me, ordinary people, have a little bit sense of taking responsibility. I need this. Don't buy immediately. Think again. Do I really need? And I need to go this holiday, that holiday. Do I really need? Have a second thought. Not to mimic what other people are doing. We are in a very much mimicking time. That's why all these big companies giving their products, like Nokia and all those big companies, giving to this big name footballer or singer to wear their things, and even not only give those products, but also give millions of pounds or dollars, because they know public mimic these, famous people. So have little bit thoughtful. That's my hope, but I really don't know whether it's going to happen. We may end up doing the same thing before, coronavirus that we are doing. I mean, thinking about that, I read 2 or 3 articles where the virus started, although I don't know exact origin, but it started from China in a particular place. They said, the place is just like a hell. Live animal, wild animal, and all are in the same place, and they are killed, and they are live, with life, they're boiled and chopped, and we can't do like that.
Yeah.
So my straight answer is, hopefully we become a little bit thoughtful and change a little bit those bad habits.
Yeah, that sounds realistic. Let's then move to the Tara mantra.
Yes.
And if appropriate, you can incorporate also parts of the special prayer to avert the plagues that the Indian scholar brought to Tibet. I leave that to you. But if you could tell us about the text a little bit so we know what we are, and then lead us in a chanting and a recitation of it.
Yeah, I don't have that incense offering text with me, and I can't do. But I'll do a Tara mantra chanting, and it has 6 syllable: Om, Ta, Re, Tutare, Ture, Soha. So it is saying to liberate from the dissatisfactions or unsatisfactions. That's how it is. But it is chanted and practiced with the deep and strong understanding and feeling of love, compassion, altruism to all living creatures.
And the text is, and the meaning of the words is to liberate from all dissatisfaction.
That's right. So I'm going to chant the mantra 7 times, then we will end it. Okay? So it is every chanting, every recitation is done with the deep sense of love, compassion, and altruism. And with that, that kind of strong mental attitude, I chant this Tara mantra to overcome, in general, all the difficulties, and in particularly the difficulties that we face this coronavirus. So I will chant this mantra. Om Tare Todare Tore So 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 Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alan. Yes.
Thank you, Geshe. Thank you.